Hello there, and this is an introductory video. I'll go in detail in another video, but this video is how to use Invector Light 3 and to create a hook shot. So we call it FPS counter 8. Got a load of different settings there. We've got two different timers. The first timer is a cooldown timer, and it's just it shot in action. And we've got a first person camera, and then 1 and 2, key number 2 switches it to third person. So the first person camera is linked to the third person, this controller. As you do that, it affects the rotation of the first person camera. So I have put a limiter in, so at the moment you can turn around and see that, which is cool. And that blue mark is a box for the hook. I'll just change it to here. We've got various little qualities of life, which is actually teleporting up a little bit, a smidgen. Okay, here we go. So okay, now the arrow keys cancel the state. We've got to do a little bit of modding of the actual script in Invector, the Invector scripts, which I'll go over. Probably, I don't know when I'll do that. Maybe at the end. So it's all working. There's a little bit of it's left click to fire the hook, right click to pull the hook, and then arrow keys to cancel the hook. And put in a spotlight as well for his eyes, but in case somewhere like here. And the main reason I've done this is really for debug purposes when I'm creating levels, and I want to be able to just move around, but I also want to get to places that I wouldn't otherwise be able to get to without having. I mean, I think flying kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. I've also added sound effects, which you can turn off or change using free sounds. I'm very happy with it. I put a really big range on it. Oh, it's also got tags to be taggable, so I've set the terrain as a taggable thing, so you can turn that off if you don't want players just using it as a really quick way of moving. There's still a couple of cases when you can mess it up and it's not quite right. So if that's going to fire it. Now, I still haven't sorted out the right click reset button. That bit there isn't quite right. So I've got to fix that. So yeah, feel free to see what you can do to break it and fix it. I'm going to release the code is Creative Commons, do what you like with it, but the tutorials are going to be attribution to the channel. So do what you like with the code, it's up to you. I'm just really glad that I managed to get it. I also I did a search through all the different hookshot grappling hook tutorials on YouTube as inspiration to get this done. I might do a credits video. Okay, so I guess we should talk about all the various aspects to it. So you've got the basic code, and again, in my Udemy courses for Dungeons and Forests, I'm going to provide all this for you. The only thing I can't provide is the Invector. You've got to import that yourself, and then I'll show you how to edit that. So I'll provide this code, and this code got an awful lot of things here. to put in. We've got a debug, which is a black cube which goes underneath, and then the hookshot itself, which is a small cube that we could change them anything we like. The rope is something that hasn't been used yet, but I'm hoping to implement proper rope rather than just using a line renderer. Okay, we're using Shader Forge's clear glass thing, just put nice and easy. Refraction and turn the refraction down. It's a bit wonky, the refraction, but it's still very cool. And yeah, so in the Invector controller, we've had to put a couple of things. Put the hookshot origin there, and in that we've got the two audio effects. So the hookshot origin is something that goes in the spine, and that's the little blue cube. And then the top and the head, I put a head camera and the spotlight, like a minus light. And the head camera is linked, and that is dragged into the hookshot. I've set up some key codes there. The rope transform, I don't think we actually use that at the moment. That's only for the rope option. The use rope thing would be, it doesn't do anything at the moment, but at some point later I'm going to put either a spline based solution or some sort of way of doing proper rope. We've got offsets, we've got the line renderer, and that's on the hook origins. I put the line renderer. And camera, yes, we've got first person camera, Invector controller, Invector camera, and use 1 and 2 to switch between first person camera and the Invector camera. I'm going to do another video on the code, but basically I'm going to provide this code as a paste bin thing, which you can then create your own object and drag it in, but you're still going to have to create a little cube, a cube for your hookshot debug, which also doubles up as a ledge for you to land on if you're shooting it at a skyscraper or something. You don't want to just immediately fall down. Or maybe you do, it's up to you, you can change that size. I start off with just a cube, so you create a cube with a hookshot debug, a cube with a hookshot, another cube for the hookshot origin, you create a camera and stick it in at the end of the armature for, for the metal warrior, and then the spotlight's just an additional so that you can see things. Yeah. Anything else to go over? I think for this video, it's just a question of how to get it up and going, and then I will go through in detail in another video. So if you drag all that in and get it all working, you've got various speeds, climb forward, climb up, offset, that's stuff for when you hit it. Max distance, I've put it as 1,000 units. Minimum distance, 3 units, just like you're going to do micro shots. Finish distance is how far before you get to it. We've got line renderer, got secondary timer. Okay, and quickly go through the code. It's a bit messy with comments at the moment. I'm also using something called Atom, which is very cool. It's kind of like a free version, or just a nice dark IDE. It doesn't have anything to do with Microsoft. And so we've got our serialized fields. This is to be able to adjust it in the editor. Let's go through it very roughly. We've got audio listeners and cameras. Camera 1 and camera 2 is the vector camera and first person camera. I've gone straight into hook shot at the start because that's the one I was having the most difficulty. So if the hook is ready, if raycast it out from the origin, hook shot origin, which is in the chest, hook shot transform forward, out, and the hook shot origin also goes the same way as the cameras. I can't remember how did I get it. Basically, it turns the face wherever I'm turning and facing. So if you found the tag hookable, so another thing you've got to do is create a tag. Yeah, we've also got debug text, which is my thing when you press F, you can actually see it on screen, and you've got unit debug.log. If it's hookable, do all the stuff, set all the positions, and set the line renderer. Set is hookshot phone, yes. Hook in place, yes. Hook ready, false, so it's not ready because we're going to set the timer now as we shot the hook. If use rope, we're not going to use the line renderer, we're going to put some other code there which we haven't done yet. And otherwise, if not use rope, we use the line renderer. Then draw rope, not go into draw rope. Hookshot move, play the ratchet sounds. We look at where we're going, and then we move towards it. And one of the things we've got to do here is switch off the vector controller. So that's handled with left button, right button within the code. So let's see if if the distance is less than the final distance, then we stop the hookshot. So once it's got within 3 meters of the target, or whatever you want to call hookshot distance, it's going to stop. Hook in place, false, and hook climb. And hook climb is just a little function to get us above the obstacle, and this gives us a fighting chance to not just fall immediately down. We've also got the debug platform which we put underneath us, an invisible platform, just to give us a little ledge. Stop hook shots, hook climb, we've got start, we're locking the cursor, we're setting the timer 1, we're setting the timer 2. I like timers. Don't really use timer 2 at the moment, but I'm sure they'll have a place. We'll update. Again, we're locking. It's being absolutely solid on the lock. We're doing the delta time. So the hook origin is, there we go. So because we've got the Invector camera dragged in as a camera, Invector camera, if I find it, game object, Invector camera. Because we've hooked that in to this code, every time the camera moves and looks different directions, we can set the first person camera to do the same thing. And that's what we've done there in update. So we're connecting the hookshot origin.transform.origin to the Invector camera. So everywhere the Invector camera rotates, we've got the hook origin rotating, which is the box in our chest. We can make it into a belt or whatever you want to make, but at the moment it's just a box. And it also transforms the first person camera. So setting rotation of the origin of the camera and the first person camera to the third person camera. So that's very cool. We've got escape key functionality. You could, instead of just exiting, you could put that into pause. Application.pause or something, I forget what the code is, but you can, if it's the editor, then stop playing, or if it's not the editor, just quit. and that's the escape key. But you can also change that if you want in the code. We've got key code P, that's just for pausing it. And yeah, so it's for the that toggles the pause, but I haven't really got pausing to work properly yet, where everything stops. First hook key, if input key is first hook key, so that's I've set that up as left click, shoot, and then in that function we handle whether you can shoot or not. So right, I had a problem with the right mouse button, so I had to actually hard code it in as get mouse button rather than using a key, a public key thingy. So I've used all these other ones here, key code. The right mouse button, I wanted it to be just to hold, I think. I wanted it whilst you're holding it. So as soon as you let go, so I think I just felt better having it as a click and hold rather than just a tap for that one. If it's dragging, then move it, middle click, that would be anything middle click. Key 1, we set the different cameras, so disable, we're not just, yes, so this set active, false. Right, okay, yeah, so we've done, although that seems a bit counterintuitive, what we've done there is we've set both cameras as active, because if you have, I had a big problem with two cameras, that if I disabled the camera, it disabled everything about that camera, which wasn't cool. So what we've done here is we've disabled the camera, but we've enabled the cameras in a certain order, and by doing it in this order, you end up with one being one of these cameras dominant, and two being the other camera dominant. I think I can't remember which way it is now, but this is the way it works. We press 1, you get first person, you press 2, and you get second. So although two cameras are active, only one of them is going to be looked at as the primary camera. And I'm still, if you can figure out a more elegant solution, I was thinking of using Cinema Machine to do this, but it's very complicated, and this was simpler. So it's key 1 and key 2, and it basically sets the priority order of the cameras, so you get a different camera without having to disable the camera completely, which leads to other errors. The FPS key, which I've set as F as default. And why that comes up. If timer 2 is running, if it's paused, the whole if pause thing we could probably get rid of really. That's work to be done later really. Editor is equals true. Late update we draw the rope to avoid dodginess happening, making sure it's in the right bits. Everything else is done first. We draw it, and then we draw the rope. And on GUI, let's have a look. If not use rope, use line renderer. Otherwise, try and do rope stuff, which I haven't figured out yet. It's something to do with drawing splines or something or other. On GUI, this is just the little thing to show the text, just the FPS. Update timer 1, update timer 2. That just gives us 2 timers to play with. The first timer I'm using as a cooldown timer. Right, have we closed that? Or just tab out? Should I get back to the right one? Right. Yeah, so the cooldown timer I've set as 5 seconds, I think. timer 5 seconds. Excuse me. That is as you shoot it. You probably get rid of the timer remaining. You don't need to edit, I don't think. So yeah, so when you shoot it, you've got to wait 5 seconds. You can change that to 1 second or 10 seconds or a minute, depending on, because I think if you actually started using this in the game, you probably don't want people just spamming hookshot everywhere. It's going to get a bit lame. So like a 2-minute cooldown to charge it up. Plus, and so taggable. So up here, tags, create a new tag, add tag, hookable with a capital H. And I've added that to the terrain. I've added it to the platforms up there. Made more hookable as a tag rather than using layers. And what else have we got to do? Oh yeah, in the code, in vector, light, in the scripts. I don't think we don't need to edit the camera. It's in the character code. We've had to put in some things. So in the motor, I've done this in another video, but I'll quickly go over it in this one. We've had to add a hook shot. When I do a search for October. Right, okay, so we've had to add a locomotion type hook shot in there. We've had to add a bool. Update motor, hook control, and then basically if it's not a hook shot, we don't want to do anything with the hook control. And it's basically if it's hook shot, if we set the hook shot, we want it just to return and not do anything else. It doesn't mess about with our animation of pulling the person. So it's basically how to switch off in third person motor. How do we switch it all off? And we switch it all off by adding a Boolean hook control. And that's in the motor. Now if I tab again, and then in the third person input, double click. I don't like going into other people's code, but I just had to switch it off. I just wanted it off. I think in the paid version of Invector, it's a different system, which I might, if I get enough interest, I could go into how to set up the paid one is a slightly different arrangement. It's not as simple as this one. Anyway, in third person input, we're basically looking for I think that we're going to October, let's find it. Hook input is a handle. Yeah, and here's the handle for hook input. And we're basically looking for if any of these inputs were setting hookshot to false. So if you're jumping, if you're strafing, if you're sprinting, if you're going WASD, you just switch off the state or the boolean. I've done it. But I think this is actually a state. And turned it into false. The only time it's going to be true is if you use the right mouse button. And the right mouse button, when you click it, you're going to set the hookshot to true. Because that means you're trying to crawl along the line. Now, if you haven't actually fired the hook out off, or you're not actually doing it, as soon as you use any key, well not any key, but WASD, jump, shift, control, any of those are going to switch it back to something else. It's going to switch off the hook shot. So by setting it like this, when you hit the right mouse button, you're going to go across. You're going to go across. So if you wanted to change this, whatever button you need to put it in here to or key to be the one that drags along the rope. So that would take a little bit of messing about. If it's if you wanted to get some sort of like menu to set the button or the key to something else other than right mouse button. This is all kind of hard coded in, which is it's a little bit messy, but it's very clean, but a bit kind of hard coded, hard wired. Everything else, that's it, I think. So we've just basically added an input handle and in the input handle, if any of the keys are like that, switch off hookshot, otherwise switch it on. And it's again, all that I'm trying to do is switch off in vector whilst we're doing the rope. Next one, again, on jump, set is hookshot false. So we just added a public virtual void hookshot, and which you can send a boolean value, and that is really to work with the other code. Everything else is just left alone. So I have learned a lot more about the guts of Invector, which I wasn't really interested in learning about, but I had to. I like Invector; it's very smooth. So, well, the free one is. I think the paid one has so much extra functionality. You lose the frames per second. It doesn't feel quite so smooth. It's having to do all sorts of extra stuff, which I think would probably be better handled in a DLL or off somewhere, coded a bit more efficiently. I think that's a problem with a lot of these third-person controllers. Is the more functionality you get with them, the more code you've got to go through, which makes it less efficient. So that's why I like the light one so much, because it's so fast. And that's probably going to be a problem later on down the road when we try and add all the extra functionality of weapons and combat and inventory systems. You're going to start. I think that's where Unity starts struggling a bit because it's not efficiently coded as opposed to C++. So you've got to be very careful with your budget in terms of scripting. Otherwise, you're going to end up with very unwieldy, clunky stuff. But right now, it does its job, and as a learning tool, it's the best out there. And this stuff is hard enough as it is without adding the extra complexity of C++ to it. That's another level of optimization that needs to be done later down the line once you've figured out the concepts of it all. Anyway, so what's this one? Import setting. I don't really need that. Well, let's open it up. See if I've no. Yeah, I didn't go near that one. Don't go near the animation. No, thank you. So animator nothing, and in third-person controller, only two settings. Basically, is hookshot equals false, and then we've set this value. But I think because I've made it virtual, that feeds into these other ones. The next one, which is third-person input, hook input. I'm a little bit hazy with protected virtuals, but I'm just using the hook input to set key codes to switch it off, and the mouse button to switch it on, and that's that. And then into the motor, again, locomotion type. This is a state machine, isn't it? So hookshot added to free with strafe, only free, and hookshot, and then here internal ball, that's really important, is hook shot. Update motor, hook control, then set up hook control. It's only a little thing, return, and then there's a lot of, if it's hook shot, then you return, which basically means you break out of any of the other motors and controls. So if not is jumping, return. If you are hook shotting, return, get out. Then the next one, same thing with air control. If you're in the hook shot mode, just switch off in vector. You don't need it. We're still going to get a little bit of overlap, a little bit coming in. And again, I can go through all this in more detail later, but this is just to get up and going. Right, we're closing that, tabbing out. So, yeah, I'll put the FPS counter code and paste bin, and I'll also provide this whole project file in my Dungeons course and my Forest course on Udemy. F to get rid of this. And then one of the ways, there's one is first person camera, two is third person. It's a lot of fun, this hook thing. And a lot of games got grappling hooks, and a lot of media uses it, like the original Star Wars, Indiana Jones uses a whip, what else is there? Try and think of all the times where you've got, there's flying. Flying is very, very powerful, but it kind of breaks immersion. Whereas this, although I've set it to rather silly settings, it's selling the immersion a bit more by allowing you, to think about, and it's the same, like with the difference between Jedis being able to fire a gun and do that versus flying through space without breathing apparatus. It's all about trying to suspend belief to have slightly more believable physics, and of course that would kill normal people. And you don't tend to be able to bounce off there. You don't tend to be able to just teleport through the platform, you just fall down. But it's just more satisfying just to be able to, he climbed through it. There was a hatch there and he managed to climb through. Oh, missed. Oh, really fell off. Again, as using arrow keys, you get away from falling animation. Sometimes you bounce back, it doesn't quite work, but yeah, you can do what you like with it. You can change it, you can make it more realistic, you have a much shorter range, you can have a lot higher cooldown. Realistically, you'd have to wind that rope back every time and set it all up. It would take about 5 to 10 minutes, realistically. And if you're interested, there's a guy who's actually creating his own one in real life, a grappling hook. You can see the true reality of what it's like in the real world. Making a grappling hook. But grappling hooks and zip lines, I think they really do add a lot of fun, as well as gliders would be good as well, being able to glide. I suppose that's something else I should look into. Anyway, that was just a quick introduction, and I will do a more detailed video later about it. Hope it's sort of use to people. See you later.